The chances are you don't know who Jho Low is, but you should. He's known as the world's biggest spender, and he is one of the most wanted men in the world after stealing around $4.5 billion in liquid cash. But Jho Low isn't your average scammer or thief. He's the man who robbed an entire country and used his stolen money to fund his luxurious lifestyle, partying in casinos and nightclubs, buying private jets and mansions, and collecting Picasso artworks. Ironically, he even financed the Hollywood blockbuster The Wolf of Wall Street, which is about a financial scam. But how did a guy born on a small Malaysian island end up becoming friends with Hollywood stars, dating supermodels, and pulling off one of the biggest financial frauds ever? It all began when Jho Low's parents sent him to Harrow, a prestigious boarding school in England, where all the rich kids go. Being surrounded by extremely wealthy classmates, Jho Low saw an opportunity to build relationships with them. To impress them, he invited them to spend a summer in Malaysia and borrowed a 160-foot yacht from a rich family friend, pretending it was his own by changing all the family photos on board. He even managed to get the letterhead of the Brunei embassy and forged a letter to a famous nightclub in the West End, asking them to reserve a VIP table by pretending he was a member of the Brunei royal family. After Harrow, Jho Low went to Wharton University in America, where he continually tried to build his personal brand, writing articles on stocks for the university's newspaper by plagiarizing reports written by Wall Street analysts. He also drove a Lexus convertible around campus. He claimed he'd bought it, but it was a lease. He even deliberately didn't correct rumors that he was a prince of Malaysia. Everything he did and said helped him build a persona that got him in the right social circles. After figuring out who the wealthiest students at the university were, Jho Low befriended them just like he did in Harrow. His ability to network allowed him to pull off one of the greatest financial heists ever. While at the university, Jho Low decided to throw a massive luxury party for his birthday and rented out an exclusive nightclub with an open bar. He wanted to project an image of success and ensure that he left a lasting impression on everyone. He even managed to persuade some of his Arab friends to set up a tour around the Middle East, where he then met with some of the richest families and made more influential connections, including a few members of the royal family who held lower ranks. One of the most important connections of all that Jho Low made was with people who ran Abu Dhabi's sovereign wealth funds, which are essentially giant pools of money controlled by a nation's government. After going on a networking tour around the Middle East, Jho Low returned to university to graduate and then set up his own company, the Winton Group. The basic idea behind the company was that he would broker deals between Middle Eastern investors who wanted to get involved in projects in Malaysia. Jho Low got luxurious offices for his new company and the famous Petronas Towers. He couldn't really afford it, but he managed to arrange a loan from a local bank because he knew he had to give off the perception that he was a serious and successful businessman. And it worked. Jho Low's networking with wealthy elites was about to pay off in a major way. One of his best friends from his days at Harrow was Reza Aziz, who was the stepson of Najib Razak, Deputy Prime Minister of Malaysia. Jho Low swooped in on Najib and quickly brokered a deal to develop a giant construction project in Malaysia using the wealthy connections he had made in the Middle East. Jho let Najib take all the credit for the deal, which boosted his popularity and helped him become Prime Minister of Malaysia in 2009. Jho Low fully embedded himself into Najib's family. He bought expensive jewelry for Najib's wife and paid for his daughter's college tuition. After Najib was sworn in as Prime Minister, Jho Low wasted no time in approaching him with an idea to create Malaysia's own sovereign wealth funds, which they set up as the 1MDB Fund. The fund was supposed to develop the country's economy, but Jho Low convinced Najib to use some of the money for political goals, such as hosting big events or building affordable housing in the area, where Najib hadn't received many votes in the election, as a way to consolidate power even further. Eventually, Jho Low took full control of the 1MDB fund with permission from Najib. He then went on to hire people he knew well as staff who were blindly loyal to him, giving him full control over the fund. Within months, Jho Low arranged a joint venture with Petro Saudi, wherein 1MDB would invest $1 billion, which was the total amount in the fund at the time. However, Jho Low transferred only $300 million to the joint venture account, and he sent the remaining $700 million to a shell company named Goodstar Limited. He claimed Goodstar Limited was owned by the Saudis and that 1MDB had to send the money to settle a debt before this joint venture could continue, but this was not true. He owned 100% of Goodstar Limited, so in other words, Jho Low paid himself $700 million from the 1MDB fund. When he got the $700 million, Jho Low successfully funneled it to Swiss bank accounts and other locations using his friends in high-ranking positions to cover his tracks. Now it was time for the real fun to begin. With the $700 million, Jho Low started to indulge in a ridiculously luxurious lifestyle, spending on yachts, mansions, and sports cars. In 8 months alone, Jho Low spent around $85 million on private jets, alcohol, gambling, and paying models and celebrities to party with him. He put the word out in show business circles that he was happy to pay celebs over $100,000 to attend his parties, and he met all kinds of famous people. He even got to date Miranda Kerr. Jho Low was finally getting the reputation he always wanted. The newspapers dubbed him the big spending Malaysian and the mystery man of the city club scene. He surrounded himself with celebrities to raise his profile further. He threw some of the biggest parties imaginable, partying with stars like Kim Kardashian, Paris Hilton, and Bradley Cooper, to name a few. There was no limit to his spending. One time he even flew on a private plane with some friends and celebrities to experience New Year's twice, first in Sydney and then in Las Vegas. Jho Low's reputation for throwing over-the-top parties earned him the nickname Asian Great Gatsby, but despite his lavish lifestyle, very little information about Jho Low was available online. Nobody knew how he got so rich. A time came when Jho Low decided to get involved in Hollywood, so he helped fund a project company called Red Granite Pictures. He personally financed the film The Wolf of Wall Street, which gave him a personal credit and a shout-out from Leonardo DiCaprio during his Golden Globe acceptance speech. But Jho Low was not actively participating. He preferred to remain a secret money man and play his part from the shadows, which is why he did not take an official title at Red Granite Pictures. After making his big move into Hollywood, Jho's company acquired a stake in EMI Music Publishing, and he joined the firm's advisory board. He wanted to build a media empire and become a legitimate, profitable business, but he had a compulsion to keep spending and acquire more. And eventually, when his money started running out, he knew it was time to steal more. So Jho Low wooed Kim Leissner, the head of Goldman Sachs' Asian division, and made a deal where Goldman Sachs would issue a bond and sell it to investors to raise more money for 1MDB. Investors were told that their money would help pay for power plants, but 1MDB had no credit rating, which made it hard to convince people to invest. So to make the power plant deals look better, Goldman Sachs paired 1MDB up with Abu Dhabi's Sovereign Wealth Fund, which had $70 billion in assets and solid credit. Jho Low used offshore tricks and diverted $1.4 billion of the $3.4 billion meant for the power plants from the 2012 bond issue and some of the funds from the 2013 bond issue to offshore accounts. In 2013, Jho Low once again diverted some of the funds raised through the issuance of $3 billion more bonds through Goldman Sachs into his offshore accounts and the shell companies he controlled. He paid off those who had helped him, including Tim Leissner from Goldman Sachs, and kept billions of dollars in his offshore accounts for his extravagant spending. Some kickbacks were also given to Najib to keep the Prime Minister happy. Goldman Sachs received around $600 million in fees and revenue for their involvement, indicating they knew something shady was going on but didn't ask any questions in return for a big payout. Jho Low was able to siphon off billions of dollars for himself, setting up bank accounts under fake company names, transferring money to trust accounts at US law firms, and taking advantage of the fact that transactions between governments attracted less scrutiny. It's estimated that around $4.5 billion was stolen from the 1MDB as a result. Despite the questions raised about the 1MDB funds and the apparent mismanagement of the fund, the Malaysian Prime Minister Najib was not concerned. He believed that Jho Low would bring investment and developments to Malaysia as promised. Jho Low, however, was funding his political campaigns using the stolen money from the fund. In 2015, a whistleblower leaked emails to the press exposing Jho Low's schemes and the full scale of the scam he had pulled off. This led to hundreds of thousands of Malaysian citizens protesting and demanding Najib's resignation for his involvement in the fund. But Najib did not resign. Jho Low quickly went into hiding. He had a vast amount of cash to live a comfortable life, so he was never caught. Najib, on the other hand, had a shock election defeat in 2018 and was voted out. And shortly after, he was arrested and convicted of multiple crimes, including bribery. Jho Low, however, had already disappeared. Nobody knew where he was, and some sources suggest that he might be hiding in China. The aftermath of the 1MDB scandal saw many people implicated, including Jho Low, Tim Leisner, and Goldman Sachs. Despite his involvement, Jho Low remains a free man, albeit one who cannot travel to many countries and must keep a low profile. His party lifestyle has ended with the manhunt for him, and he is said now to be anxious and paranoid. The scandal itself was a betrayal of the Malaysian people, who were left with massive debts after being promised development projects. The financial system's vulnerability to manipulation was evident, with powerful people and banks incentivized not to ask too many questions, as long as they were making money. Jho Low's ultimate downfall came from his desperate need for respect and validation, which drove him to chase more and more money, instead of quitting while he was ahead. In the end, the ones who suffered the most were the people of Malaysia, who were left to bear the financial burden of the scam. The FBI is still trying to piece together the full extent of the scandal, but it's clear that the consequences will be felt for some years to come. And that's it, so be sure to catch our next video featuring more authentic stories from top brands. How one person rescued Intel from the brink of collapse.